Says I'm live, looking for the timer. There it is. Hey, welcome to the Upcycles live stream. I'm Matthew, owner and mechanic at Upcycles. I'm doing the mirroring on the thing throws me off. I'm doing another morning. This is before we open. It's like 10:45 in the morning here. I open at noon. I'm going to try to keep this one relatively short. But this is a vital thing to know on really any bike, but especially a bike that had, or not really any bike that has quick release. This is relevant information too, which is all kinds of bikes, road bikes, mountain bikes, doesn't matter, old bikes, new bikes. It really doesn't matter at all. Relevant information, and specifically a bike that has a quick release hub and disc brakes, especially on the front wheel. There is a known safety issue with them where essentially the quick release is like an older invention. If this is not exactly the truth, I don't know, but a story I heard from a coworker years ago, and I never looked it up, is that Campagnolo, which is like this legendary Italian bike company, like makes components for the 1%, essentially. They were started by a guy named Tullio Campagnolo, and I don't know if it's like his first invention or his first innovation or whatever, but he is credited with inventing the quick release. And the origin story I heard, shout out to Avery from Firehouse Bikes, who told me the story, was he was in a race and he got a flat, and he's like fooling around with a wrench, getting his wheel on and off, and he thinks like there's got to be a faster way to do this. So he came up with a quick release. And in Campagnolo's logo, at least some of their logos, let me see if Campagnolo logo. Yeah, it's like a pair of wings with a quick release in the middle. So seems pretty important to them. My dog is whining. I'm going to put him on timeout. And he'll be good. Come on, Pete. Come on. Good boy. 5 minutes. All right, it is 10:47. Timeout ends at 10:52. Anyway, so yeah, it's old tech, and then I don't know when disc brakes on like what the earliest patent on a disc brake on a bicycle is. I know there are Shimano disc brakes that I've seen that are probably from like the 70s, and they're not good, and they really didn't take off, and they kind of become, to my knowledge, they become like more commonplace just in like the 20 teens, like, in the past 10 to 15 years, they start to really have a lot of space in the market. I think mostly on mountain bikes originally, and then because they stop better. Road bikes were kind of late to adopt them, but they're there now. And then on e-bikes, you really should not buy an e-bike that has any other kind of braking system. You really should have disc brakes on an e-bike. They just work better, is the short of it. We could get into more, but I'll save that for some other video about like why disc brakes or whatever. But for now, suffice it to say, they work better. And an e-bike goes fast, it's heavy, you want good brakes. So you should have a bike with disc brakes. But then unfortunately, you do run into a compatibility issue, specifically with front wheels with disc brakes. And the exact like physics of this, I don't really know. Like that's not, I don't have that education. But I think essentially by moving your braking surface down to the hub, where your quick release is, where your axle is, and only having the brake on one side of it, some combination thereof, it can like essentially like kind of twist the hub in the dropouts on the bike, and then like make it come loose, and if it's like bolted down tight, it won't do that. But with a quick release, because by its nature, it's a thing designed to come on and off relatively easily, it can loosen up the front wheel, and it can loosen it up bad enough that the front wheel straight up falls off the bike. And that should be obvious that that's like a pretty major safety issue. If you're riding your bike, you see the front wheel flying off the bike ahead of you, or rolling along beside or behind you, the front of your bike's about to hit the ground, and then you will likely do the same. So you want to avoid that. I think there's a strong argument to be made that quick release just probably shouldn't really be on disc brake bikes at this point, on new ones, but this is not a very regulated industry. We're regulated by the CPSC, the same like governing body that regulates like children's pajamas and strollers and treadmills and I don't know, kind of like any like non-food, non-autumn, it's basically like a consumer product that's not regulated by one of the other industries. So like not cars, not firearms and alcohol and stuff like that, but toys, tools, furniture, clothing, all of that is under the CPSC. It's a lot of stuff to cover. I have no idea if there's even like a single person who spends all of their time worried about bicycles. But like, when there is a bicycle recall, that's who will like announce it and stuff. But there's no ban on putting quick release on a disc brake bike. And to be fair, if it's done correctly, it's fine. The issue is this is a thing a customer is going to do themselves, and it's not quite as intuitive as it should be. So I'm going to talk about it now. I'm going to let my dog off the timeout. I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about it. Okay. It's okay. Good boy. Good boy. That often will work to get to relax. So first thing, to introduce a couple like concepts and terminology. This is a fork off a road bike of some sort. I would expect it to take a 700C wheel, most likely, maybe a 27-inch, probably not anything else. It would probably work fine with either of those, assuming you put the right brake on it. But so it's not an e-bike fork, but the concept still applies. I'm going to hold it upside down just to make it easier, but I think we all know your wheel would be, here. Crown race here. This goes inside the steer tube. Headset holds it together. Lock nut on the top. Handlebars would go, or the stem would go in here, come out. Handlebars. You ride the bike like that. Wheel spins like this. Okay, so this part is the only part we really need to worry about today. These are called the dropouts. And then the space between them is called the over lock nut dimension, also the OLD, which does also can be pronounced old, but nobody says that. They say OLD. And then what is a lock nut? The lock nut, so this is a hub. It's outside of a wheel. It'll make it easier to demonstrate. So this is a front hub, would have been from a mountain bike or like a hybrid, Shimano Deore or Deore A. This would have been a rim brake bike. There's no place to put a disc rotor on here. It doesn't matter. It's still going to be relevant for the purposes of demonstration. This part here on the end, on either end, those are the lock nuts. And then if I can easily, it'll be a whole distraction and it'll just complicate things. So I'm going to skip it for now. Here's what we need to know about this. These are the lock nuts. And then the end here, let me get this oriented on the camera. So the part I'm touching now, that's the lock nut. And the part I'm touching now, that's the axle. Okay, and then the axle has a hole in it. And if I line it up just right, you can maybe see my eye through it was the idea, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Let's stop wasting time. but I can't someday. That's a goal for the future. But so there's a hole in there. You could see my skin through it. If I put it back in front, we can find a spot where you can see my skin tone show through it, and that's because there's a hole the whole way through it. So it goes in that hole, a quick release skewer. I've got 4 here to show you. These 2. There's one, there's the other one. It's holding the same way. Are the most common designs you would see. This one is called a closed cam. This part here is the cam. This one is called an open cam. Closed cam better, more durable. Open cam really common because it's cheaper. I would assume is why it's so common. Definitely a worse design is the design, unfortunately, that you'll see on a new Rad Power bike and a lot of the direct-to-consumer bikes. But so this one actually, one benefit of this one, it does make it more obvious how it works. So you, on this side, you have this little nut. This you just do with your hand. It's just, I believe this is an M5 threaded, and then you have these 2 little springs. And let's try to get a good image of that. Something I like to point out, the way I have this oriented, it's a little bit triangular, and the smaller end is up at the top and the wider end is at the bottom. People often do this wrong. The smaller end is going to go against your axle like that. The bigger end goes against the nuts on the cam, or whatever this piece is called below the cam, on the skewer. So you can see on this one that the smaller end is on the inside, and when we put this on our hub, the smaller end is going to go that way. A lot of people do that wrong. How much does it matter? If you straight up took these springs off, threw them in the recycling bin, you could make this quick release work just fine without them. They're nice to have. I'd recommend using them, but they're arguably inessential. Every single quick release comes with them. I don't think that's a mistake. Manufacturers don't want to give you extra parts. It would be like a huge waste of money, right? If I'm making 1,000 skewers a day and I don't put a spring on every single one of them, there's 2 springs on each one. Let's say spring costs a penny. I'm just making these numbers up, but let's say a spring costs a penny. There's 2 springs on every quick release, so that's 2 cents on every one. If I'm making 1,000 of them, it's $20 I saved by not putting them on, right? And they're not making 1,000 of them; they're making like millions of them, right? So they would save a lot of money by not putting them on if they didn't need them. You should have it. It helps it open better is the main benefit. I think it helps it like get into its right spot. It gives it like the right feel. You can make it work without them. Lots of people do. I would use them. They gave them to you. You paid for them. I would use them. But anyway, what's really important though, don't put them on backwards. And people do it all the time. I don't know why. I think it just for whatever reason, that seems more intuitive to people. So that's wrong. That's correct. You want the little end to the inside. Same as that. You want them to mirror each other. So if you put it like that, that's wrong. How much does it matter if you put it backwards? It matters more than you might think. And basically, it can get like jammed in between the axles. So this, if we look here, that's going to mate. Can you see that? That's going to mate with the axle. It's like the right size. If I put it that way, it goes over the axle, right? And then where's that going to go? That's going to go inside the dropout of the fork. And I'm telling you this because I've seen it a lot and it's wasted a bunch of my time. It's going to get stuck in there and it can be surprisingly difficult to get it out. Meaning like I can't get your wheel off because the stupid spring was put in backwards and now it's jammed in between the axle and the fork. Sometimes it'll still come off pretty easily, but I've had to in the past on occasion, like break out a pair of pliers and pretty roughly like yank it out of there. And then it's done. And I'm going to charge you $1 for the replacement spring because I shouldn't have had to do that. Just put the thing on correctly. But so that's that. And then what I also wanted to show you about this to explain how the cam works. So this thing turns 180 degrees roughly. So that's all the way open. That's all the way closed. There is about, to my mind, I mean, it might seem weird because it's more or less in line with the skewer, but I think of this as like 180 degrees. This is 0 degrees. You could do it the other way, it doesn't matter. And so that's at like 90 degrees, perpendicular to the fork, right? If this is on our fork, okay, 180 degrees, 0 degrees, 90 degrees. And you can see it's perpendicular to the fork. So proper form on this is you get it, you with it at the 90-degree position through the hub, through the fork on the bike. You're going to use the nut on the other side with your hand, and you're going to tighten this down. Now on an e-bike, I'm going to do this differently, so we'll get to that. But generally, how I was trained just on quick release bikes in general, quick release wheels in general, you get that so that with this at 90 degrees, as it is here, you're imagining my fork is there and imagine it's perpendicular to my fork. I get this tight enough that the wheel stays on the bike. I could walk away from it and it'll just hold there. Then from that point, I close it and tighten it down the rest of the way. And you can see, if you look, this space, so there's our pivot point and there's this like little nut. It's not really a nut. I guess we'll call it a spacer. It probably has a name that I don't know. There's these knurls on it to grab onto the fork. But you can see the silver space here. So there's this black little piece of plastic, and then our lever is made of aluminum, and then the pivot point here is steel, I assume, and is attached to the skewer. So you can see that there's like less of the silver there, less of the aluminum on the lever. And as I turn, you can see that that part gets wider and then it locks in. So, and it might be hard to tell, but it does actually push what I'm calling the spacer here in. So that tightens up and will really get it like sandwiched nice on the dropouts on the fork, and get you going. So it's easier to see that on the closed cam than it, or I mean on the open cam than it is on the closed cam. Why do I say closed cam is better? It's just way more durable. This whole thing is made of metal. This, as we discussed, has this like black plastic in here, and it's not going to be easy to tell from the camera, but you can see it's like a bit chewed up already. This is a used one. I don't know what bike it came off of, but that little bit of like rubber, plastic, whatever, it wears out over time, and it can be harder and harder to like get the thing locked down once it's totally like worn out. And these really aren't that much more, and they work better. But a lot of bikes, just to save costs at the manufacturing level, are going to come with this style. Cheaper replacement wheels will come with that style as well, the open cam style. Two others I want to show you quickly. These are both also front hub skewers. These are different versions of what I'd call a security skewer. This one, I think the customer lost the key to it, and I pulled it off with like channel locks or vice grips or something. That's why that's all chewed up. But so this really isn't a quick release anymore. It replaces the quick release. But so it has the nut on the end that you do with your hand, but then instead of the lever with the cam, it's just on this one, it's just a hex key. It's like a 5mm Allen key or hex key, or hex wrench or Allen wrench that you would tighten it down with. And then this one actually gives you a torque spec on there of 10 Newton meters. So the benefit of a quick release, it makes it a lot easier to get your wheel on and off. The drawback of that is it makes it a lot easier for anybody to get your wheel on and off. And so if your bike's going to be parked in like a shared space or outside or whatever, a common thing, if you live in a place where people steal bikes, if you live in America, you probably live in a place where people steal bikes. You leave your bike locked up, you go to work or whatever, you come back, one of your wheels or sometimes both of your wheels are missing. That's because this, super easy. This is on the bike, boom, this is off the bike. Take it with me, gone. I got a free bike wheel. This doesn't make it that much harder, but it makes it a little bit harder. You have to have the right tool. Now, it's a 5mm Allen key. It's extremely common. People do have them, but you know, not everybody has hands, right? But most people walking around the world have hands. That's all you need to get a quick release open. Fewer people are walking around with Allen keys in their hands, so it adds a level of security. And then there's a bunch of different designs of security skewers. And this one you can see is triangular. So that's the end you just do with your hand. And then that takes the place of the lever. And you need a triangular tool that, as far as I know, was made for these to tighten it down or to loosen it. So it just adds a level of security. There's a bunch of different designs of them. There's others outside of this. I don't really have a whole lot else to say about them, just letting you know that it is another thing that's out there. And I had them in my parts bin next to these ones, so I grabbed a few and figured I'd show them to you. Okay, now let's talk about getting it on your bike. So again, fork, I'm going to hold it upside down just to make it easier. I wish I had, how can I hold this in place? I'm just going to tilt the camera down a little bit and kind of hold it between my legs here. Okay, so fork, hub goes in the dropouts like so. Lock nuts, dropouts. The spacing here is called the overlock nut dimension. On most vintage bikes, if they're really old, it might be something smaller than this. The vast majority of like old road or old mountain bikes, it's going to be 100mm here on the front wheel. Newer things, e-bikes, things with like boost spacing, any like fat tire kind of thing, it can be bigger than that. A lot of the Rads are, I think, 135, which is like a rear wheel standard for like mountain bikes and hybrids. But 100 is very, very common. And then like some old bikes and some like modern like folding bikes and stuff might have smaller, but really, really common on the vast majority of bikes to see 100mm there. And then I'm going to use the closed cam skewer just because it's better, but doesn't matter. But so you can see my springs are already oriented correctly. So assuming it's not on at all, oops, I dropped it, but it fell right in my lap. So I take that spring off. I already took the nut off. And reasonable people can disagree. I think it really, especially on the front, you can put this on either way. On a bike with disc brakes, I really want to see this on my right side because my rotor on the front, I really want to see it on my right side because my rotor's on the left, and it just decreases the likelihood that I'm going to like touch the rotor and get grease or something on the rotor when I'm doing the quick release. So that's how I prefer to do it, but you will see people do it the other way, and they're not necessarily wrong, but it's not how I would do it. Okay, and so that's on, and it might be hard to tell. I can tell, but I also look at these things all the time. But the wider end of the spring is against the cam, and the skinny end of the spring, you can see, is against the axle. That's what we want. And then on this one, I'm going to take my spring, I'm going to put it on that way. So the skinny end goes into the axle. Okay, and then I'm going to take my nut, I'm going to get the wide end of the spring around it, and then I'm going to tighten this up and just turning it with my hand. A thing you could do for a time, and it wouldn't be totally wrong, is to kind of use this as a wing nut and turn it that way. Don't tighten the wheel on all the way like that. Really, really common beginner mistake. And what you will find is it won't stay tight. So don't do it that way. And then just as I said, I want this set up 90 degrees perpendicular to the fork, right? And at 90 degrees, I want this to be snug on this side. And it is. And as I said, giving that a good old shake, and this is open. It even, does it say open? Yeah, it's going to be mirrored. Oh, no, it's not. Now I do feel like I don't understand anything. Oh, it's mirror. I don't know how things work. Obviously I do know how some things work. Am I? No, that is backwards. Maybe I'm dyslexic. No, it's not. I can't read that. I can't really read that, but anyway, right here it says open. No, it's definitely not backwards because that, yeah, this is my left or right, Shimano. Sorry, I'm learning how computers are. Shimano, Japan, open. Oh, I can clearly read that now. That clearly says open. Okay, so that's open. And on the other side, it says close. So all the way like that, that's open and it's not tight. If I had turned it over and shaken it, it would come off. And then that's my 90 degrees where it's snug, right? Doesn't come off. And then it's going to be a little bit harder to do this, but no, it's fine. That's closed. So, and it should say close. Yeah, it's a little hard to read, but it says it. And so that's nice and tight. And then a thing that's hard to, the video is not going to communicate this, but you can, in this kind of, especially in this kind of situation where you have a hub that's not laced into a wheel, I can feel that turns like very smoothly there. This is like a used hub, so it probably needs an overhaul. But then as I tighten this down, you can see how weird I hold my fingers when I do things. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna be able to tell from the video, but it's definitely tighter. You know, the way, like, it actually compresses the bearing adjustment itself a bit, and now that's nice and snug. Now that is the way I was, trained to do it on regular bikes. On a e-bike or really any bike with a disc brake front fork, you'll see some different designs out there. A thing that's common on some better designed newer bikes, let's get this back off, is these forks. So this is the front of the bike this way. You have your rake of your fork goes to the front. This is the front of the bike there. This is like a vertical dropout, essentially. It goes more or less straight up and down to go onto the wheel, or the wheel goes more or less straight up and down to go into it. Some better designed quick release bikes that come with a quick release front hub with a disc brake, they will turn the dropouts to the front. They're like forward facing dropouts. They're kind of down some. They're not like totally horizontal to the front, but they're kind of down some. But I call them forward facing dropouts. There might be another word for them. For reasons I don't understand, again, because it's just, I've never been an engineer. I haven't worked in like manufacturing or anything like that. So I don't know mechanically or physically like why it makes a difference, but that alone can be enough to prevent the issue of the wheel coming loose with a quick release hub and a disc brake, which is what we're really concerned about here. But so on this one, I'm going to use it to model though. Let's pretend you don't have those. So on any like normal bike, if you have a rim brake bike, what I already showed you, that's the way I would do it. Get it to 90 degrees, get this snug on this side, make sure everything's oriented correctly, and then close that down. It should be kind of tight. A place one of the places I originally cut my teeth and learned about bike stuff. Can you see the imprint on my hand there? It's subtle, but it's there. It's right here. That was their like method for like, is your quick release tight enough? Is like, did it leave an imprint on your hand when you pushed it down? Not very mathematical, but it works. But I like the 90 degrees because it's like this should be snug. Get that to 90 degrees. Get that nut on the other side snug, and then it should be like kind of challenging, a little bit hard to get it going. But then what I want to point out about this is at that level of like tight, I can still with one hand get this open. So it's not crazy tight, right? But it's adequately tight for this application where this is a rim brake bike. It would be fine on a disc brake bike. If this is the front of your bike, this is very important. Get it way tighter than that. Honestly, not very mathematical, but I bring it more open, maybe something like that. You could do it all the way open, but I do it more something like that. And then I get my other side tight, and it's, this is harder, but it's also safer. So let's do it that way. So that's tighter there. And then I might not actually be able to do this on this one for a variety of reasons. Normally doing this with the open cam ones, that's a little bit not as tight. It's really going to fight me, but that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes on your live stream. It's fine. You're allowed to do that. And we learn from it. So I really can't get it much tighter than I did, but that is tighter. And then my very not mathematical, it's not this would not pass my test. Let's see if I can do it with the open cam. My real test for is my quick release tight enough when I'm doing like a tune-up or a flat fix or an assembly of like a Rad Power Bike, which has a quick release skewer, the front disc brake, and the vertical dropouts, it's just a known safety issue. And I think my responsibility as the person putting the bike together, excuse me, is to do it correctly. So keep my riders safe. That's what I want. I want safe, happy riders. I want to live forever. I want you to live forever. We deserve it. We're not going to get it, but we deserve it. Anyway, so we're looking at the open cam one now, which, as I said, doesn't work as well, but actually probably there's a good chance it's what's on your bike. If you have a Rad Power Bike with a quick release front wheel, this is probably what's on your bike. But okay, so there's my 90 degrees. It holds. Close that down. It's on. It's tighter. But then what I like to do is get this. I open it, so I'm like past my 90 degrees. I didn't really say that before. I'm past my 90 degrees, and now I'm getting it tight on this side. And now I really want to fight with it. And another thing I can do to cheat is point it towards my fork, because then I can close my hand on it. Oh yeah. And now that's tight. And then my test for these, I would try to get this a little bit tighter. My test for these is I don't want to be able to open it with one hand. I'm not going to push as hard as I can, but I'm going to push modestly hard. And if it opens, and that's still opening, then I want it tighter. To be clear, I was just talking about how unregulated this industry is. Nobody taught me this. This is me. I came up with this on my own, partially because I am a person with generalized anxiety, and I'm responsible for other people's safety. And I really, 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 more than I want anything. I want lots of things, but more than I want anything, I want to not be responsible for somebody's bike coming apart on them, So I like overemphasize this particular point. But okay, so now my test, I'm pushing pretty hard. Like I'm not the strongest man in the world, but I work with my hands. I'm pretty strong in my hands, and that is not going. So now with two hands, I can get it apart, but with one hand, it won't come. That's my standard for, on the Rad Power bikes, or really any bike I'm working on. If it has a disc brake, the vertical dropouts, and a quick release, I want it that tight. I want it so tight that I can't easily with one hand. I don't know that you can tell, but I'm pushing pretty hard. It's not going to go. Ooh, I'm shaking with how hard I'm pushing, and it's not going to go. So that's what we're looking for. It didn't. No, it didn't. It didn't move at all. Shaking pretty hard. It's not going to go. That's tight enough. Then I can really exert myself. I think you could hear it in my voice, and now it goes. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I think. If you're working on your own bike, especially an e-bike, especially this style of dropouts where they point down, I would recommend get it that tight. You don't want it to come loose, and it won't. Like when you do it that tight, I've done it on a lot of people's bikes. They don't come loose. I'm gonna knock on this wood bench here. You can't see, but this is wood below here. Anything could happen. I do a lot of service on bikes that people put together themselves or that somebody else worked on. And not every time or anything like that. I'm not trying to act like I'm the only person who's ever done anything correctly. I'm not. Lots of people do things correctly. Lots of people do things incorrectly. Realizing how chapped my lips are in the camera now. I've seen it a lot. I've seen people come in, bring their bike in, and like you can hear the wheel rattling in the dropouts. Like it's really not tight at all. Let me see if I can create that. So let's pretend we do it all the way wrong. So here's all the way wrong. Okay, don't do it this way. This is an example of what not to do. Okay, I just used the whole thing as a wing nut, and now I'm done. And basically, like I'm pushing a little bit, but like you really don't push much, and it's going to start coming loose. And let's see if we can get one. You hear that? That's a loose wheel. What's going to happen if you're riding it? It's not guaranteed, but there's a good chance that wheel's going to come off. So that's the main thing I wanted to show you. We're at about 36 minutes. I'm more or less at the time, but one last thing. Your lever position here where you end up matters. And as I say all the time, reasonable people can disagree. I have this on the right side of the bike, which is where I would put it if it were a disc wheel. It's not a disc wheel, so I would typically actually put this on the other side, but for demonstration purposes, it's fine. But again, let's get this oriented. So I don't know if you can see, but this is the front of the bike. The bike's going to go this way as it moves through the world. And I like this to the back. That's like my number one way to do it when I can. But when I was having trouble getting it tight, you may have noticed that I had it more like up, like that. I think that is also fine. As so long as it's not in like an off-road application. To me, this looks like a space that like a little tree branch or something could find its way in and open it up. So I don't love it, but I can get it more in line with the fork, and then it has less space there. I like it back. Straight up is fine too. What you don't want to do though, and this would be a case of having it too loose. Actually, I'm not going to be able to do it with this one. With some forks and some quick release combinations, you can actually have your lever bottoming out on your fork blade before it's actually all the way tight down here. So you don't want to do that. So on ones where they're very close, I actually do what I call like the piece of paper test, which is seriously just like, can I get a piece of paper in between the parts, in this case, between the skewer and the fork blade. I also do that with the tensioners on some of those Rad runners. The single speed Rad runner, this tensioner is considered really, really, really close to the frame. That's basically it. So to review, dropouts, lock nuts, your spacing is referred to as the overlock nut dimension. Skewer, I'm just calling that the nut. This is the lever. This part here is called the cam. This is a closed cam. It's just a better version of the same mechanism. Excuse me. The springs, use them. You bottom, use them. Little end pushes against the axle. Larger end pushes against the quick release. And then getting this tight. General rule of thumb, tight at 90 degrees. And then tighten that down. Might be a little tighter than it needs to be, but it's fine. If it's a disc brake wheel on really any bike, but especially on an e-bike, if it's a disc brake wheel, I don't know why, especially on an e-bike. On any bike, if it's a disc brake wheel on the front with a quick release skewer, especially with the vertical dropouts, get it tight. Get it extra tight. It does mean it will be harder to get it off, but it also means like it will be harder for it to come off accidentally. And then think about the position where your lever ends and make sure if you did everything right to this point, this wouldn't be the case, but generally they will say open and close somewhere. This is a different one, and you can see it says close. You should be able to see it say close. You should be able to see it say open. I think that's it. Nobody joined me, but that's okay. I still am not telling people I'm doing this, and I'm still not on a regular schedule. Feel free to drop questions or comments in the the thing where you do that. Like, subscribe, join my Patreon, buy my t-shirt. I actually do have Upcycles t-shirts. Buy a t-shirt. They're awesome. I'm not going to show you one right now, but I have them. They're on my Instagram. Give us all your money. Think about me before you go to sleep at night. Think about me again first thing when you wake up in the morning. Pledge your fealty to Upcycles PDX. No, but seriously, thank you. If you watch this, thank you for watching it. If it helped you, good. That's what it's here for. Cool. All right. Take care.